Shabbat Shalom. Now I have something of a sense of what my daughter felt like in December when she was called up for her bat mitzvah. Okay, so there are a lot of rules in today's Parsha Ki Teitzei, as we have already seen. We must put a railing around our roof so that no one falls off. We must help our neighbors get a fallen donkey or ox back on her feet. We can't just barge into someone's house to grab collateral for a loan. We must bury the body of someone we hang on the day we hang him. We must leave some leaves on our olive trees for the poor. Many of these rules plainly reflect Jewish values about the importance of caring for the needy, for the stranger, and for animals, even though we'd probably choose differently if we were coming up with 74 new commandments. Other rules are a bit harder to understand. Why can't we mix fabrics in our clothing or mix different kinds of animals in our fields? And then there are the really concerning rules. Ki Teitzei jumps right in with one of these. The Parsha tells us that if an Israelite soldier desires a woman captured as war plunder, he can take her and marry her as long as he does several things. He first has to bring her home and let her shave her head, trim her nails, change out of her captive's clothes, and mourn her parents for a month. What's striking is that this rule was, in fact, motivated by the principle that Jews should protect the vulnerable and powerless. It offered a way better deal than any other culture was giving captive women at the time. The soldier had to let her mourn her losses. He had to make her a member of his household. He couldn't just assault her on the battlefield. And if he got tired of her, sure, he could get rid of her, but he couldn't just sell her into slavery. These were actually revolutionary protections. And yet, this rule turns our stomach today. Yes, we share with our ancestors a belief in protecting the powerless, but we think there are much, much better ways to apply this principle than forced marriage and rape. Just as we think there are better ways to protect the community's moral and spiritual health than by stoning to death wayward sons, adulterers, and non-virgin brides. Ki Teitzei reminds us that it's not always easy to bring our Jewish values into the real world. We do the best we can to apply eternal principles to the social realities of our time and place. We agree with each other about the big picture, but we vociferously disagree about the details. We make concessions for our limitations. Sometimes we get it wrong. In our fledgling democracy, riven with partisan conflict, Thomas Jefferson summarized this as, every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. Take the minimum wage, for example. Both those for it and those against it say that their position reduces poverty, social spending, and inequality. Neither side can win the argument simply by invoking Jewish values of fairness or compassion for the poor. The questions they disagree about are empirical questions, and their answers depend on social and economic facts that we can't find in our traditional Jewish sources. Jews are also called on to care for the environment, but commanding us to care for the environment doesn't tell us how we ought to care for the environment, any more than asking me to fix my car tells me how to rebuild the engine. The Torah doesn't put a thumb on the scale for either wind power or nuclear power. If we want to know which to pursue, we need to look to scientists and economists, not to the sages. The moral path is even less clear when multiple conflicting Jewish values are at stake. What if wind farms kill wildlife? What if a climate change treaty traps poor countries in poverty? What if a policy that makes everyone richer also increases the wealth gap? What if liberal immigration policies give illiberalism a foothold? How do we weigh safety versus security, care for the self versus care for the other, the needs of the tribe versus the needs of the stranger, liberty versus equality? There's a reason the Talmud deals so extensively with the difficulties that arise when multiple commandments clash. In a secular context, my husband and I see this moral struggle every year in our class on the law, policy, and ethics of abortion. Engaging with some of life's most profound questions, our students defy crude stereotypes at every turn. In almost a decade, we've never met a pro-choice student heedless of human life, nor a pro-life student heedless of women's autonomy or equality. The challenge for every student is the same: to answer questions nearly impossible to answer and balance human goods nearly impossible to weigh. Reasonable Jews can share fundamental principles, but disagree about how we should apply those principles in situations such as these. Our principles are the starting point, not the end point. We should expect our fellow congregants to share the values that define our faith and community, but we shouldn't demand consensus on specific policies and candidates. Nobody at Temple Emunah stands where I am now and proclaims that you can't be a political conservative, or God forbid, a Trump voter and be a good Jew. But it's implied here every day in 100 large and small ways that political conservatism is incompatible with Jewish principles. That political conservatives are either too small-hearted to care about our shared principles, too confused to understand what those principles required, or both. And this isn't unique to Temple Emunah. We see it across America on both the left and right. We've lost sight of the fact that every difference of opinion isn't a difference of principle, that our political opponents are often those who share our fundamental principles but disagree with us about how to effectuate them. In the movie Everyone Says I Love You, Alan Alda and Goldie Hawn play parents horrified that their son has become a Republican. As the story unfolds, they're overjoyed to discover that the cause of their son's distressing political turn is, in fact, a tumor pressing on his brain that has deprived him of oxygen. What a relief! Their son is treated, he gets some much-needed brain nourishment, and he returns to left-wing politics. Much like this fictional son, I entered adulthood a passionate liberal. And like this son, I too turned politically rightward. Today, I am a Republican, but unfortunately, I can't blame my political views on a serious medical condition. The cause of my disorder isn't immediately apparent. It can't be my religion. I hope it's obvious by now that I'm not a fundamentalist Christian. I'm not even an Orthodox Jew. It can't be my social circle. I barely even know any Republicans. Everyone in my family and most of my friends are socially progressive. I was raised in a liberal college town after stays in California, Puerto Rico, and a majority-minority neighborhood in Brooklyn. I went to not one, but 2 liberal women's colleges. It can't be my profession. I am an animal protection lawyer who spent years litigating for PETA. In fact, almost every job I've ever held has been for a liberal nonprofit. It can't be my family. I'm biracial. My mother, who raised my twin sister and me as a single mother, was Black. Her Puerto Rican mother did peace work. Her father was an undocumented immigrant who fled an oppressive dictatorship in the Dominican Republic. My mom never had the opportunity to go to college or own a house. She lost the last job she ever held due to racism before dying of cancer at only 53. I thank God often that my slave ancestors survived the Middle Passage when so many others did not. My white father dropped out of high school and later got his GED. He struggled with severe mental illness and addiction his entire life. When I was a kid, he bounced between jobs and jail and the psych ward. It's been a little more than 2 years since he committed suicide. He was only 65. I miss both my parents every day. It can't be my upbringing. Growing up, we were the only poor people we knew in our wealthy town. We often received public assistance. I know what it's like to go to the grocery store first thing in the morning so the other kids don't see you using food stamps. My mother died in Section 8 housing. We were evicted for failure to pay rent. Our family of 4 once spent 6 months living in a single room. I remember many times when our phone and even electricity were cut off. It can't be my media diet. I don't get my news from Fox. I read constantly. My house is full of books, most written by liberals. I have a law degree from Yale. It can't be my husband. Yes, I am married to a fellow conservative, but he was also raised liberal, and we were registered Democrats when we met. He makes us dinner and takes the girls to the dentist and supports me in every ambition. Plus, I may be biased, but I think he's a pretty smart guy too, if being a Rhodes Scholar and graduating first in his class at Harvard College are anything to go by. And it can't be because it's made my life so easy. Conservatism hasn't offered me a moral path of least resistance. Take it from me, it's not easy to be a political conservative living in Belmont, working at Harvard, and worshiping at Temple Amunah. One must have a much thicker skin than I do to escape the constant slings and arrows with one's confidence intact. So that's my story, and honestly, it hasn't been easy to share it. There's a lovely ethnography by the anthropologist Barbara Meyerhoff of her fieldwork at a Jewish senior home. One of the residents there, a man named Shmuel, tells her something that's always stayed with me. People are like rubber balls. Reducing our stories to a simple narrative is like sticking a pin in us. It fixes us in place. It flattens us. Many of you are probably familiar with the psychological concept of the uncanny valley, which describes our feelings of unease and even disgust when we encounter something like a robot that looks almost but not quite human. I've been sitting with those feelings myself as I wrote this, like I've created for you a me that is almost me, but not quite. It's the fixed and flattened version of myself, shed of most of the things that make me fully human. In revealing myself, I feel like I've paradoxically reduced myself. But I'm doing it anyway, because I think opening this vein serves a real purpose. In our partisan age, it's second nature to fix and flatten our political opponents into stereotypes, to prejudge without listening. I want you to hear me without preconceived notions. I'm not a Republican because I'm stupid or uneducated or revel in white privilege or come from a conservative family or married a troglodyte or am morally lazy or grew up rich or always had everything go my way. I'm a political conservative because I've done a lot of reading and thinking and talking and studying and concluded, rightly or wrongly, that political conservatism creates the best conditions for human flourishing. I respect that other people do the same work and, rightly or wrongly, reach different conclusions. The difference between us is a difference of opinion, not a principle. Like you, I am deeply committed to tikkun olam, tzedakah, teshuvah, charity, justice, freedom, care for the stranger, concern for the earth. I believe that every human being has inherent worth and dignity that we are commanded to respect. I just believe in good faith that politically conservative policies and ideas often best effectuate these core Jewish principles. Why is it so hard to believe that good Jews can disagree even about things that really, really matter? Today's Parsha amply illustrates that even our most sacred texts can apply core Jewish values in ways with which we profoundly disagree. Kiteitzei's concessions to our ancestors' limitations should remind us that our context and assumptions blinker us all. No one sees God with fully open eyes. Indeed, the voices of our sages arguing about how to interpret and apply Jewish principles fill 63 tractates and thousands of pages in the Talmud. The rabbis disagreed about topics as vital as any we're debating now: the severity of social sins, the death penalty, judicial ethics, majority rule, minority rights, property rights, economic justice, the limits of charity, life and death dilemmas. The Talmud exemplifies what Pirkei Avot calls argument for the sake of heaven, debate driven not by ego or greed or competition, but by a shared pure goal to find the truth. And rather than paper over these disagreements, our faith, uniquely among all others, preserves and honors them, famously declaring majority and minority opinions alike the words of the living God. We need more arguments for the sake of heaven. We need more formal and informal opportunities to discuss our differing opinions on how to apply Jewish principles. We need more speakers from across the ideological spectrum to discuss how they apply Jewish principles in their lives and work. We need more opportunities to explore together what our Jewish sources say and don't say about hot-button issues. And at the same time, we need fewer pamphlets that disguise specific empirical claims about issues like gun control as uncontroversial restatements of Tikkun Olam. We need fewer activities that disguise specific contingent claims about issues like racial justice as uncontroversial restatements of Tzedek. We need fewer guests from ideological NGOs that conflate the organization's agendas with Jewish law. We can't assume that everybody agrees with a case that we haven't even made. Pretending that we all agree doesn't persuade or bring us closer to the truth, just tells dissenters that they don't belong. Haven't we Jews learned this the hard way since October 7th? Many of us have found ourselves outsiders in places we once felt at home. We've seen what can happen when assumptions take the place of evidence, when one side's story is reported as fact. We've realized that newspapers and organizations that we thought were reliable sources of truth can be just as biased as those we disparage. We've learned that people can claim social justice for good and bad causes alike. Let's focus more on the work that unites us. Let's talk more about observing Shabbat, sanctifying our daily lives, raising Jewish children, meeting the challenges of assimilation, and so on and so forth. Let's unite around the countless nonpartisan ways there are to love thy neighbor. Campaigning for one's vision of social justice can be an act of chesed, loving kindness, but so too can refusing to typecast, delivering meals, providing medical transport, or listening with an open mind. Food and clothing drives aren't less necessary because they're uncontroversial. Visiting the elderly, sitting with the dying, and staffing the suicide hotline are God's work too. And when we must face politics head on, let's face it together. Opposing Nazism was political. Opposing slavery was political. Opposing anti-Semitism is political. But political moments like these call for even more debate and discussion, not less. Argument for the sake of heaven doesn't impede moral action. It's how we determine that action is moral. If we win, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs reminds us, we win. But if we lose, we also win, because being defeated by the truth is the only form of defeat that is also a victory. I've given you a lot either to think about or ignore, so let me wrap up with this. When I converted to Judaism, I confided to the Beit Din that my great fear was that other Jews wouldn't truly accept me as a Jew. I'm afraid, I wrote, of being left in the lonely in-between I know well. I've never been white enough, black enough, Latina enough, rich enough, or poor enough, and at the same time, I've always been too white, too black, too Latina, too rich, and too poor. I felt like an imposter my entire life. I thank you all for allaying my fears that I would be excluded as a convert. Temple Emunah has always embraced me as a Jew, and for that I am grateful beyond measure. But sadly, because of my politics, I'm still in that place I know well, on the outside looking in. I hope that our community can truly open itself to all of us who are committed to Jewish values, and remember that every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. Shabbat Shalom.